Hey guys, I hope you're well. If you're new here, my name is Radhika. I'm a junior doctor working in London as a paediatrics trainee, and I have a new YouTube channel where I'm planning on making lots of videos about life as a doctor, what I get up to in my spare time, and everything else in between. So last week I uploaded a vlog about my day being redeployed to ITU, but after uploading this I did a few more shifts in ITU but had a very different role, and I shared my experiences on my Instagram stories and loads of you said you'd like me to make a YouTube video out of it. Keep watching to hear how my days were in ITU, where I had more of a nursing assistant role rather than working as a junior doctor. All of the patients in ITU at the moment have COVID, and normally an ITU patient would have one nurse per patient. However, at the moment, because there are so many COVID patients and so many ITU patients, there actually aren't enough nurses to be able to do this. So sometimes a nurse might be looking after 2, 3, maybe even 4 patients in a shift. So whilst I was working in ITU, I was basically doing whatever I could to help the nurses within my own capacity. The nurses are very skilled and know how to use a lot of different machines and do things that I don't know how to do, but I did what I could to help, and I'm going to share with you some of the things I did over my 2 days working in ITU. One of the main things I did was observations on the patients. So because these patients are on such intense therapy, they require observations every single hour in order to keep a closer eye on them and have better detail of what's going on. So at the end of their bed, they have a huge chart. It's like really, really big, like out of the screen, this big, which has loads of detail about things like their blood pressure, their heart rate, their temperature, what kind of medication they're on, the ventilator settings that they're on and how their breathing is going, really strict fluid input and output monitoring. So I do things like measure how much urine was in the catheter and note that down. Really detailed information about how the patient's doing, just so that we can have keep a really close eye on them. Another thing that I did was help draw up medication. Now, this is something I haven't done since I was a medical student, and even then I only did it 1 or 2 times. Essentially, the nurses literally said to me, this is what needs drawing up, this is a syringe you need to draw it up in, would you mind doing it? And I got a lot better at it as the 2 days went on. It kind of gave me a really interesting insight because I'm so used to prescribing medication, but I never think about what that entails practically and what that will require the nurses to do. So it was quite insightful to think about it in a very different perspective. There's also lots of different ways of drawing up medication, and one of the things that scared me the most were these little glass ampules that need to be snapped, because I smashed them in my hand twice, but I'm okay, don't worry. But yeah, it just has a knack to it, and obviously nurses do this all the time, so they were really good at it, but I didn't really know how to do it. Yeah, so drawing up medication was something I did a lot, and I kind of like doing that because it's quite a laborious thing to do, but I knew that I could do it and help, and it would be a job done for the nurses. So that was one thing I also did quite a bit of. Now, another thing that I helped with was something called proning. So proning essentially is turning a patient from their back to their front in order to improve the oxygenation in their lungs. And I've heard about this, but I've never actually seen it done firsthand. It requires a lot of people, a whole team of people. So for this patient, there were 7 of us, and we have to really carefully and in a really ordered way turn a patient over from their front to their back. The patient is completely sedated, so they're not able to help us. So that's why it requires so many people. The patient's also connected up to loads of different things like lines and monitoring and infusions and things. So those need to be looked at, and some of them disconnected for a few minutes. Some of them need to be kept connected, and those need to be kept an eye on whilst turning the patient over. And then there's a whole proning checklist before and after doing this, just to kind of make sure that everything's disconnected and connected appropriately, and that there's no pressure areas and no risk of any complications developing from proning the patient. And then the patient would be on their front for 12 to 16 hours, and the nurses and doctors on the next shift would deprone them and turn them back onto their backs. So that was really interesting because I've never done it before, and like I say, being an extra pair of hands, I was just able to help do that and help turn the patient over. One small doctory thing I did was doing bloods on a patient. So if a patient spikes a temperature, they often need a blood culture. One of the doctors was going to come back and do a blood culture with an ultrasound machine after ward round because the patient didn't have very good veins. But I said I would give it a go, and I managed to find a random vein behind this patient's ankle and managed to get a blood culture. And I was really pleased with myself because it's not something I would have been able to do when I was in F1, but I managed to get it on my second time now. And I think it's because I've done so many paediatric bloods over the last 6 months that I was able to fairly easily find a vein on a difficult adult. So I was really pleased about that, and it's just a small win of my day. Another thing I really noticed, particularly being a nurse rather than when I was a doctor the shift before, was the connection that these nurses have with their patients, and kind of, emotionally how attached you can become. The patients often had photos by their bedsides with them and their family members. So it was quite difficult seeing that and seeing what they were normally like before they became so unwell. One of the patients actually received a letter from a relative, so the nurse read that to the patient, and that was also really nice to see, but also made me quite emotional as well to hear this letter being read to the patient. And it was also so nice to see how the nurses speak to the patients, where they're sedated and they probably won't remember how they're being talked to and what's being said, yet the nurses would still be really kind and talk to them and kind of do their hair and shave their beards and things like that. So I found that really, really touching. I can't really explain it in any other way, but it hit me, and I kind of was like, wow, this is really nice that this is how the patients are treated, even though they're sedated and probably won't remember most of this. Yeah, so that was definitely a huge learning point for me, and I definitely developed more of a connection and an attachment to the patients when I had a more of a nursing hat on than when I had a doctor hat on the previous shift. One thing I did that I'm particularly pleased I was able to do was to relieve nurses for their breaks. These nurses are meant to have 4 breaks in a 12-hour shift, but a lot of the time they only get 2. So sometimes they came up to me and just said, oh, if you're not busy, do you mind keeping an eye on my patient? There's nothing to do. I've done all the medication. But if you just keep an eye on them and let someone know if anything changes. So that was really nice, because they could then have their break, and I just had to sit there and keep an eye on their patient and escalate to the nurse in charge if anything started beeping or there were any issues. And yeah, I was just glad that I was able to do that, because so many of these nurses aren't getting the breaks that they need, and breaks are so essential in this kind of environment, particularly when you're always on your feet and you're in PPE. Yeah, breaks are really needed. I think one thing I really noticed working with the ITU nurses was how supportive they all are, and the environment that they make for each other. They were all helping each other as much as possible. They were helping me, even though sometimes that would have slowed them down a little bit. They were just all really kind, really supportive, and really, really nice to work with. And I know some of you have messaged me to say that you'll be working in ITU soon. And I just want you to know that, like, obviously I've only had one experience, but they're so lovely, and they're really grateful for the help. And I was really glad that was the case, because it can be quite tricky working in a new environment where you don't know anyone. I think this whole experience has just given me a whole new perspective on nursing, on intensive care, on just COVID in general. It's really opened my eyes to a lot of different things, and I'm really grateful for how kind and caring and resilient and hardworking these ITU healthcare professionals, like nurses, doctors, physiotherapists, everyone, how hard they've been working through this whole year. It's not easy, particularly in PPE. It's really, really hard. And yeah, I'm just very, very grateful to the work that they do, and I'm in awe of how hard they've been working. They're the real MVPs, honestly. I think that's everything I have to say. If any of you have any comments or questions about my time in ITU, if any of you are going there soon, then do comment down below and I'll try and get back to you. If any of you are ITU nurses or doctors or healthcare assistants or anything, thank you so much for everything you're doing. And yeah, it was a really, really eye-opening experience and really fulfilling as well. Thanks for watching this video, guys. I'll see you in the next one. And don't forget to like and subscribe and share as well if you want to let other people know about my experience in ITU. Thanks a lot. Bye.